On Sunday, 18th April 1943, 4 friends decided to go bird nesting or egg collecting in Hagley Wood near Stourbridge in Worcestershire, England. At around 12:30 p.m, the group split, and Robert Hart of Walliscote went up to an old elm tree stump. Inside the cavity was a skull. He called over the other boys, Thomas Willits, Bob Farmer and Fred Payne, and one of them used a stick to rake it out, but put it back again. The following day, the local police received a phone call from Thomas's father when his son mentioned to him what had been found, and they were soon at the scene. Thomas, the youngest of the group, showed Police Sergeant Skerritt of Clef which tree to look at, and inside he saw the skull lying on its right side and a number of other bones, including a femur and a shoe. A gold wedding ring was also discovered. He informed Superintendent Holyhead, and Professor James M. Webster, the director of the West Midland Forensic Science Laboratory in Birmingham, was called to the scene. He arrived at 4:30 that afternoon, and it was under his direction that the tree was opened. Some distance away, the skeletal remains of a hand were found, meaning the skeleton was almost complete. Webster thought the skeletal remains had been in the tree stump for at least 18 months, possibly longer. He had taken the bones back to his lab, where he set them out, and determined that they belonged to a female. He estimated her age to be between 25 and just under 40. He thought 35 was a good estimate. She was of below average height, standing at just 5 feet, and was of slim build. She had very irregular teeth which were distinctive, and hair was found on the skull and in the cavity of the tree. It was light brown to mousy in colour. She was poorly dressed. During his examination, he found no sign of disease in the bones and no sign of trauma. He told the inquest that he thought it highly unlikely that the woman had gone voluntarily into the stump. It was his view that the woman had been killed nearby and put into the stump when still warm, or, if she was killed elsewhere, was transported there very soon after her death, by car. She would have been placed there in a sitting position, with her knees pulled up to her chest to fit. The tree was situated around 35 yards from Hagleywood Lane, some 650 yards from the Kidderminster, Birmingham main road, and it was easily accessible by vehicles. It was also a well-known spot for day trippers and courting couples, and a few years earlier it had been home to travelling folk. During the inquest in the last week of April, Professor Webster told the court that he'd found a piece of her outer garment stuffed into the mouth of the skull, and he believed that this may have caused her death by asphyxiation. He was asked if this could have been a suicide, but Webster ruled it out. He also ruled it out as being an accident. In reply to a question from the foreman of the jury, he said he was quite certain the woman had been pushed there before rigor mortis had set in. The coroner, Mr. P. Evans, and the jury were shown images of the site, including the tree stump, which measured 24 inches at its base, tapering to 17 inches at its narrowest point, and standing about 3 feet tall. Photographs of the inside of the hollow of the stump, as well as photographs of the bones, the shoe, and the fabric that had been recovered, were also put into evidence. These were handed to the jury by Detective Inspector T. Williams of Worcester. The coroner also told them that they could see the skeleton in person, as the remains were brought to the court, but this was politely declined by the jury foreman. Following deliberations, the jury returned the verdict of murder against some person or persons unknown. Meanwhile, Superintendent Holyhead had an investigation on his hands. Who was this woman, and who had killed her? Police cross-referenced her details with missing persons report in the local area and contacted dentists all over the country, but it was to no avail. In early 1944, Birmingham CID were alerted to writing on a wall in the area of the city markets, which was thought to have been connected to the murder of the woman found in the Wych Elm. To this day, these words resonate in this case. The writing read, "Who put Bella down the Wych Elm, Hagley Wood," and had been written on a derelict property in Upper Dean Street. 2 days later, more writing was found regarding Bella, chalked on premises in Pershore Street. At roughly the same time, police were called to a third premises, a house on Haddon Hill Road. These words read, "Lou Bella." This last phrase later transpired to have been on the wall since before the previous Christmas. Police analysed the handwriting and concluded that the same person had written all 3 messages. Did this person have information on the dead woman? If so, they wanted to know what it was. They thought he was a countryman, as he'd spelled witch, as in Wych Elm, correctly, which was uncommon, and they thought that he may have been a market stall holder or brought his produce into the city on market day. However, this lead went cold. On Monday, 3rd October 1949, Worcestershire CID returned to the Wych Elm. They'd received new information from a man who'd come forward and had been in the army since 1940. Superintendent T.N. Williams said the man had told detectives he remembered seeing a party of travelling folk in Hagleywood Lane, very near to where the woman was found. Williams went on that inquiries into the man's statement were ongoing, but they couldn't be ignored. He'd accompanied police to the spot, and his remarks were believable. Police were hopeful this fresh information would solve the case, even though the information was vague and slender. Superintendent Williams stated, "The identity of this woman is the crux of the whole problem. 6 years ago we followed hundreds of leads. This case was never closed, and we shall check every new fact." Using modern techniques, a facial reconstruction was done of Bella by Liverpool John Moores University in 2018, but to date she remains nameless, although there was speculation that she could have been a sex worker who went missing in 1941. This was reported to police in 1944, and it was known this Bella worked the Hagley Road area. But nothing came of it. Today the question remains, who put Bella down the Wych Elm?